I am turning my attention for and the main story is an editorial piece, believe it or not, on something in the national spotlight because I had seen someone here locally, somewhat locally, make a disparaging social media post. That was our neighboring Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. And that is to say something of the U.S. Israel relationship, something that I have spoken about at length in other ways through that teaching series, and of course, covering the news in passing. But I wanted to say something because the amount of disinformation, misinformation, would, whatever would have it, is absolutely borders on it is ridiculous at best, but absolutely appalling at its worst. The U.S. Israel relationship, of course, is probably one of the best out there in terms of what alliances we have, given the amount of intelligence sharing, weapons sharing, terms of national security, defense, etc. Most recently, it was in the headlines when the Israelis foiled an assassination attempt against our own president. But going back about a decade ago, more than a decade ago, the Washington Institute for Near East Policy noted that at the time of the Boston Marathon bombing back in 2013, that the Massachusetts General Hospital was prepared to handle the amount of mass casualties that day because 2 years prior to that attack, an agreement with the Israelis or Israeli medical professionals had helped them prepare hospitals' emergency plans. So that was, of course, on the medical side of medical sharing between the two nations, and noting that it was a two-way street that Israel has. So this is what this article also noted. So of course it noted on one hand the Boston Marathon help there, said that Israel has contributed to American hard security through counterterrorism, cooperation, intelligence sharing, and the development of such innovations as unmanned aerial vehicles and missile deployment. Not to mention soft power or soft security in the technology sector, medical sector, as I just mentioned, and the sustainability sectors. The Waze app, which we all have come to use for avoiding traffic pitfalls and or finding the best routes, and in some cases avoiding the police, that was an Israeli invention, not an American one. That was an invention by an Israeli startup that was then later on bought out by Google for a very large sum of money. But the point there being that that was an Israeli invention through Jewish technology, not U.S. technology. Not to mention when you get into the more sophisticated weapons for missile defense like David Sling, Arrow 2, Arrow 3, the whole of the Iron Dome defense system that the Israelis have developed mostly to protect themselves from the terrorists around them. That is all at Israeli technology that the U.S., of course, has now taken an interest in for our own military and our own capabilities. But to highlight the fact that it is not a mere one-way street of President X gets dragged into this and blah blah blah. This nauseating crap from the media. but to say that the Israelis have more than held up their end of the bargain in terms of any defense agreement. Now, the question that perhaps is on everybody's mind is what to do about the thorny issues with their fighting against Hezbollah, they're fighting against Hamas, and of course, I guess by extension, Iran, because those two groups are funded entirely by Iran. The first thing I will say is I never thought in my lifetime, which is not that it's that long, that I never thought that I would see huge swaths of Americans supporting state sponsors of terrorists over over Israel, over Jewish people, and to see anti-Semitism the way it is now. The reality is, given what I just mentioned to you about the advances in military weaponry and the technology systems, that if Israel had wanted to commit a full-on genocide against any of these groups in Gaza or Palestine, although Palestine is just a Roman term that had its anti-Semitic roots in itself, so they could have easily done so without question. Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran have made it very clear that they want to eradicate everyone, whether that's Israel, the Jews, or the Americans, for that matter, calling us the great Satan, as it were. And so, why any American would support these people is beyond me. And the problem when you have terrorists fighting in warfare is they do not play fair. They do not fight by the rules of the Geneva Convention, and they will embed themselves deeply, or as deep as they possibly can, into places like hospitals, schools, and as far into civilian populations as possible to avoid getting killed. That just is how it goes in warfare with terrorists, and we are not in a position to say when we do not have them here in the West on our doorstep. That is all I'm going to say on that, because I feel like I could be here all night going on and on against that. But that is just to say something from an editorial position on why the U.S. needs Israel as much as we like to think it's the other way around. The U.S. needs that technology for its own defense as much as they might need our support.